All right, kids, gather round. I got a story to tell. This one today comes in from people asking me about all the famous people that I've uh, interacted with or come across, and I think this one's a little bit different. Everybody expects it to be about musicians only, but this one's different. This is about Dan Aykroyd. And it started back when I played with a group called the Beat Daddies, one of my favorite bands ever. Lord knows that we miss Larry Grisham, and I wish he were here to tell this story, but I think about that man every day. Nevertheless, I love the Beat Daddies. Everybody in that band, from Larry Grisham to Tommy Stillwell, who is on this video, John Rockner, Brett Meacham, everybody involved. I was so blessed to be around those players. Tommy tells this side of the story how they got involved with Dan Aykroyd, but that night of the show, uh, they had arranged for us to meet Dan in a meet and greet, and we play our set, we go backstage, and they had arranged for us to meet with Dan. Larry had always told me that Dan had played the Beat Daddies on his on his blues radio show, and I was like, yeah, whatever. And then as soon as Dan walked up to us, he started rattling off songs that we played and that they had wrote, and I was so like, oh my gosh, I can't believe this. But the photo you see at the end of this video, Larry is not in it because he had not gotten a chance to eat all day and finally went to the buffet and got some food. And they had just arranged for us to meet Dan at that time, and it didn't happen. I wish he was in it, but it's one of the wonderful moments because Dan was such a great and humble guy. Uh, he was actually, he they went to introduce him on stage. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Dan Aykroyd. And he went up there to join Bobby Rush. And if you've seen Bobby Rush, if you know, you know. When they announced him, he was nowhere to be found. They had to call his name like 3 times, and through the crowd, you saw this little, excuse me, pardon me, excuse me, pardon me, and it was just funny that a star that big, of that caliber, wasn't coming out on some red carpet or didn't have some ego, and it was a pleasure to see and work with him and see him play that night. You see how much of a music lover he really is. He's a really great harmonica player, and so was Larry Grisham. I miss that man, and maybe one day on these shows I'll talk more about Larry and do a reminiscent of him. But again, thank you for watching Rock and Roll Road Stories that you've never heard, and that's our story about playing with Dan Aykroyd. You know, how many times you get to do that in your life?
Well, you want some recollections about the Dan Aykroyd show we did in Jackson, Mississippi. I do recall the ballroom was beautiful, nicely decorated, but the stage was kind of cramped because due to the fact we had everyone's back line up there at once, and there were 3 bands on the bill. It was us, the Beat Daddies, Mr. Sip, and of course the headliner was Bobby Rush, featuring Dan on harmonica. I don't really recall the show. It flew by so fast. And but I remember the crowd reaction would indicate that we played well and they enjoyed the music. So I guess that's what counts. Really, I think got set up on what happened, what occurred back in 1994. The Beat Daddies were signed on to tour as a supporting act and backup band for a singer out of Boston named Mighty Sam McLean. And, we had the bus at the time. And so we served as his backup band and as transportation for a brief tour through the Midwest and the Deep South. And this tour did include a stop at the House of Blues in New Orleans, which had actually opened. It opened January of '94, and the grand opening was during Mardi Gras. And that's when we happened to be there. And of course, with the grand opening, Dan was there for the entirety of the festivities. And he seemed to really enjoy what we did as a band. And so much so, and he was familiar with our label, Waldoxy, which is a subsidiary of Malaco Records, Malaco Music out of Jackson. And so it piqued his interest, and he chose a song off our release, our second release on Waldoxy, a song you played a million times called "How Blue Must I Get." He featured that on his House of Blues radio show as his pick hit of the week, and it kind of helped thrust us forward quite a bit. We got a lot of residual work out of that. Our pay scale went up anyway. It really helped out a lot. So there was always this lasting uh, relationship with between him, Dan, and our label and the band. Well, fast forward to a few years back, and the show comes up in Jackson, Mississippi, and of course the Beat Daddies were in the conversation as for being on the bill, along with Mr. Sip, who was also on the Malaco label, and Bobby Rush. So we showed up, and as I recall, the thing I didn't realize, I knew that Dan had played harp, uh, with his the Blues Brothers thing that he did, but I didn't realize how accomplished he had become on the instrument. The guy could really wail.
So the reason Dan was late getting to the stage is because he was at the buffet getting cheese and crackers and stuff like that. So I think that's just really funny. He was out mingling with us peasants, and he couldn't have been a nicer fella. And that was just a really great experience.